In this episode of the podcast, we will dive into one of the important episodes in functional nutrition.
All right, so get ready to dive deep into the world of CRISPR and biohacking. You've given us some really interesting stuff to unpack. We've got this a CRISPR Bite podcast series about gene editing and how it's impacting our food. And then there are these YouTube interviews with this couple. They're all about biohacking, and they even made a documentary.
What's wild is that you're more likely to see CRISPR on your plate before you see it in a doctor's office.
So before we jump into all that, can we give our listener a quick rundown of what CRISPR is exactly?
Okay, so imagine this. You've got a document like a Word doc, and there's a typo.
Yeah.
You need to fix it, right? Well, CRISPR is like the find and replace for DNA.
That's actually a really good way to put it. And that CRISPR Bite podcast, they're doing a pretty good job of explaining how this tech is already changing what we eat.
Like they talk about how in Japan they've got these tomatoes. Get this, they're supposed to relieve stress.
Stress-relieving tomatoes.
Yeah.
Seriously. How's that even possible?
Well, scientists figured out how to use CRISPR to boost GABA production in the tomatoes.
Yeah.
And GABA, that's a natural compound that helps you, like, chill out.
Okay, so are you saying that if I eat these tomatoes, I'm going to feel less stressed?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, it's the first CRISPR food that's actually on the market, but we still need more research to figure out the long-term effects and how it compares to, other ways to de-stress.
Right, right. It's still early days, but it's pretty cool to see what's possible.
For sure. This goes way beyond just, making tastier food. CRISPR has the potential to solve big global problems like food security.
And I think the podcast had some great examples of that.
Oh, yeah. There's this group of scientists in Missouri. They're using CRISPR to make soybeans with tons of protein. The idea is to reduce how much meat we rely on for protein.
Which would be huge for the environment. Meat production, it's a major contributor to greenhouse gases, so alternative protein sources, we need that.
Absolutely. But there's another side to consider, too. While it's good to cut down on meat, we also need to think about the downsides of relying too much on genetically modified crops. Things like monoculture farming and the potential for unintended consequences for the environment.
That's a good point. Like any new technology, there are benefits and risks.
Yeah, totally. Another cool example they talk about is what's happening with the vineyards in California. They're under attack by these pests, and scientists are now using CRISPR to fight back, to modify those pests and protect the grapes.
That's amazing. So many different uses for CRISPR. But the podcast also mentioned something about some hornless cattle where things didn't go exactly as planned, right?
Oh yeah, the hornless cattle. It was a huge success story at first. They used CRISPR to edit the genes of these dairy cows so they wouldn't grow horns. The idea was to prevent injuries to the animals and the farmers.
That sounds really humane, actually. So what was the problem?
Well, the FDA took a close look at the DNA of these cattle, and they found some unexpected changes. Seems like the gene editing messed with other parts of the cow's DNA.
Wow, so even with a tool as precise as CRISPR, there can be unintended consequences.
Exactly. It's a powerful tool, but we're still figuring it out. Research, regulations, and careful testing are all super important.
Okay, so we've seen how CRISPR is shaking things up in the food world. Now let's switch gears and talk biohacking.
Biohacking is basically all about taking control of your own biology. It's like using different techniques and stuff to get healthier and feel better. And there are tons of people who are into this now.
Yeah, and we've got these two, Anthony and Teresa Lawley, this biohacking couple who are super into it. They got into biohacking because they had a rough time with traditional medicine.
Their story is pretty amazing.
Right, like their son, he was misdiagnosed a bunch of times, and the healthcare system just wasn't cutting it. Plus, they had their own health struggles too. Anthony actually lost a crazy amount of weight by going all in on biohacking and changing his lifestyle.
Wow, that just shows you sometimes you got to take your health into your own hands.
Exactly. Anthony and Teresa realized that biohacking could actually change lives, so they're all about spreading the word and helping other people take control of their health.
They even made this documentary, Biohack Yourself, where they interviewed over 100 experts, scientists, doctors, even other biohackers. They want everyone to have access to this stuff, not just a select few.
That's great. So what kind of biohacking techniques are they talking about?
They talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Simple things you can do every day, and then some, like, more high-tech stuff. For example, they talk about cold showers.
Cold showers? Not sure about that one.
I know. It doesn't sound fun, but cold exposure is really good for you.
Hmm.
It boosts your energy, puts you in a good mood, and even helps your mitochondria work better.
Hold on, mitochondria.
Yeah, they're like little powerhouses inside your cells. They're what make energy. And cold exposure, it kickstarts them.
Interesting. So it's more than just waking you up in the morning. What else do they talk about?
Well, something else that's pretty simple is blue light blocking glasses. These days, we're always staring at screens, and that blue light messes with our sleep and makes us tired. These glasses, they help filter out that blue light. You sleep better, less eye strain.
I've actually been thinking about trying those. Anything else?
Oh yeah, they also get into intermittent fasting. It's super popular these days.
So it's not just what you eat, it's when you eat, right?
Right. And there's a lot of research that says intermittent fasting is good for you in a bunch of ways. Weight loss, better blood sugar, even brain function and cell repair.
Wow, okay. What other kind of things do they cover?
They talk about how important sleep position is, like elevating your head when you sleep.
Seriously.
Seriously. It can actually help you sleep better and might even help your brain detoxify.
Huh, you learn something new every day.
And they talk about gratitude, being thankful for the good things in your life. That can actually make you healthier and happier.
Yeah, when I'm feeling grateful, I definitely feel better overall.
Right. You don't have to do anything fancy. Just take a few minutes every day to think about what you're grateful for, and it can make a big difference.
Those are some good ones to start with. What about the more, advanced stuff?
Well, they also talk about things like hydrogen water. There's some research that says it can reduce inflammation and red light therapy.
Hydrogen water, I've never even heard of that.
It's water, but with extra hydrogen, which is a powerful antioxidant, so it's supposed to have a ton of health benefits, but we still need to do more research on that.
That's pretty wild. What about the red light therapy?
Red light therapy is all about exposing your body to certain kinds of red light.
What's that supposed to do?
Oh, it's supposed to do all sorts of things, like improve your skin, reduce inflammation, make you think better, even boost your energy levels.
There's so much to explore when it comes to biohacking. We can't forget to talk about Dave Asprey. He's like the ultimate biohacking guru.
The father of biohacking.
Yeah, exactly. He even wrote a book called Game Changers. He says biohacking is the art and science of changing the environment around you and inside you so you have full control of your own biology.
That's a great way to put it. Biohacking, it's all about controlling your environment and what's going on inside of you to be as healthy as possible.
It's pretty empowering. But we also need to acknowledge that not all these biohacking trends are safe. Like Ozempic, for example.
So Ozempic, yeah, that's a medication for diabetes,
Yeah.
but people are using it to lose weight.
So it's not really meant for biohacking.
Right, and it might work for weight loss in the short term, but we don't know what'll happen if you use it that way for a long time.
It's like with anything, you got to be careful and do your research.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like just because something is trendy doesn't mean it's good for you.
So true. And that reminds me of Gary Brecka, this human biologist you mentioned. He's got a really unique perspective on optimizing your health.
Oh, yeah.
He actually worked in the life insurance industry for years, which is kind of a weird background for someone who's so passionate about helping people live longer.
It is pretty interesting. For like 2 decades, he was basically predicting how long people were going to live.
Really?
Yeah. It gave him a really deep understanding of what makes people live longer or, what factors contribute to longevity.
Wow, so he was literally looking at data and trying to figure out how long someone was likely to live.
Exactly. And he started to see the limitations of traditional medicine,
What do you mean by that?
Well, he could tell pretty accurately how long someone was going to live, but he couldn't really do anything to help them, change their outcome.
That must have been so frustrating, like having all that knowledge but not being able to actually help people.
It was, and that's why he decided to switch gears and focus on empowering people to take control of their own health.
That makes sense. So what did he do?
He created this genetic test called the 10x genetic methylation test.
Okay, so what's so special about this test? There are tons of genetic tests out there.
This one's different. It actually looks at mutations in your genes that affect how your body absorbs nutrients, and that can have a huge impact on your health. Your energy levels, your mental clarity, gut health, immunity, all that stuff.
So you're saying that if you understand your genes, you can make better choices about what you eat and how you live your life.
Exactly. It's all about personalized health.
Yeah.
Figuring out what works best for you based on your unique genetic makeup.
It's like instead of just getting generic advice, you're getting a personalized roadmap to better health.
Right. And I think that ties into what we've been talking about with both CRISPR and biohacking. It's all about giving people more control over their biology.
It's funny. I'm just realizing now how CRISPR and biohacking are kind of similar in a way. They both offer tools for taking control, but on totally different scales.
Oh, that's a great point.
It's like CRISPR is about editing the blueprint of life, while biohacking is about optimizing the machine that's already been built.
I like that analogy a lot. And they both make you think about how far we should go with all this optimization. Where's the line? When does it stop being about health and start being about trying to be perfect?
That is a really important question, and it's one that we're going to have to keep asking as these technologies keep advancing.
For sure, we need to have these conversations about the ethics of it all and make sure we're using these tools responsibly.
Yeah, we can't just focus on the science. We also need to think about the values and principles that guide how we use this knowledge. And that's a conversation that everyone needs to be a part of.
I agree. We need to think about the unintended consequences, and make sure these tools are being used to create a healthier world for everyone.
And I think it's also important to remember that health isn't just about being perfect. It's about living a fulfilling life, whatever that means for you.
Right. Biohacking shouldn't be another way to judge ourselves or compare ourselves to other people. It should be about empowering people to make choices that are right for them.
It's about finding a healthy balance between taking care of yourself and accepting yourself for who you are.
I love that. It's about embracing our humanity.
And remembering that health is a journey, not a destination.
It is. It's a process of learning and growing and adapting.
And that process should be driven by curiosity and compassion, not by fear or pressure.
Exactly. It's about trying new things and experimenting and not being afraid to make mistakes.
And we also need to remember that not everyone has the same access to these resources. There are huge inequalities in healthcare, and those are only going to get bigger as biohacking becomes more popular.
That's a really important point. We need to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to benefit from these advancements, not just the wealthy or the privileged.
So it's not just about individual health. It's about creating a more just and equitable healthcare system for everyone.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of really interesting stuff today. What are some of the key takeaways that you think people should be thinking about?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that the future of health is all about being proactive, taking control of your own health. And we have more tools and knowledge at our fingertips than ever before, whether it's CRISPR or biohacking. We have the power to shape our own health destinies.
That's exciting, but it's also a little scary. We need to be informed and we need to think critically about these advancements.
Absolutely. And we need to approach all of this with humility and a willingness to learn and adapt as we go.
So what are your thoughts on the fact that CRISPR is already having a bigger impact on our food than on medicine?
It is kind of surprising, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it also shows just how powerful CRISPR is and how much potential it has to address some of the biggest challenges facing humanity, like food security and making sure everyone has enough to eat.
Yeah, and it's amazing to see how CRISPR is being used to make food production more sustainable, like with those protein-packed soybeans. That could be a game changer.
It could be. But we also have to be careful and think about the potential downsides, like the impact on the environment.
Right. It's not always as simple as it seems. We need to be really thoughtful about how we use these technologies.
Exactly. And that reminds me of the hornless cattle. How even with a tool as precise as CRISPR, there can still be unintended consequences.
It's a good reminder that we need to proceed with caution and do our research before we go all in on any new technology.
For sure.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about biohacking. What do you think about all the different techniques that Anthony and Teresa Lawley talk about in their documentary?
I think they offer some really great advice, and they do a good job of showing that biohacking doesn't have to be complicated or expensive. There are a lot of simple things you can do every day to improve your health.
Yeah, like the cold showers and the blue light blocking glasses. And I love that they talk about the importance of gratitude. It's such a powerful practice.
It is. And they also cover some more advanced stuff like hydrogen water and red light therapy, which are really interesting areas of research.
I'm also really intrigued by Gary Brecka's work with genetic testing. It's amazing to think that we can use our genes to create a truly personalized approach to health.
It is really exciting. We're learning so much about how our genes influence our health, and we're developing more and more tools to use that information to improve our lives.
It's like we're all becoming citizen scientists exploring the inner workings of our own bodies.
Exactly. And that's what makes all of this so fascinating. It's about giving people the power to take control of their own health.
But as we discussed earlier, it's important to approach biohacking with a balanced perspective. It's not about trying to be perfect. It's about finding what works for you.
Exactly.
So to sum it all up, both CRISPR and biohacking are giving us incredible opportunities to improve our health and well-being, but it's up to us to use these tools wisely and to have open and honest conversations about their implications.
I couldn't agree more. With great power comes great responsibility, and we need to make sure that we're using these technologies ethically and for the good of everyone.
That's a great point. And it leads perfectly into our final thoughts for this deep dive. It really makes you think. How comfortable are you with gene editing in your food? Are you ready to start biohacking?
It's a big question.
It is, and there's no right answer, but I think it's so cool that we're even having these conversations. CRISPR and biohacking, they're forcing us to rethink what it means to be healthy.
Yeah, we're being challenged to think outside the box and explore all these new possibilities.
And it's giving us more control over our health than ever before, which is pretty amazing.
It is.
We've just scratched the surface here, but hopefully this deep dive has given our listener a good starting point.
Yeah, and I hope they keep learning and exploring.
What are you most curious about when it comes to CRISPR and biohacking? What are your concerns?
Yeah.
How do you see all of this fitting into your life?
These are big questions, and the answers are going to be different for everyone, but it's important to think about them.
Because the future of health is being written right now, and we all have a role to play in shaping that future.
We do.
So much to think about, but hopefully our listener is feeling inspired and ready to take charge of their health.
That's what it's all about.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, but we'll be back soon with another deep dive. Until then, happy biohacking.